So in this video, I'm going to talk about the situation of what happened to us as avatars when we came to Earth for the first time, when we for the first time took embodiment on Earth. And I explained in the previous video the basic dynamic of why we took embodiment. So in this one, I'm going to focus on the experience that we had when we came to Earth. And in order to really begin to grasp this, we again have to look at the fact that we came from natural planets. We also have to realize that we were not ascended masters when we descended to Earth. So we had not reached that level of consciousness. And that means that there were certain things we still didn't quite understand. So we also have to understand that we came from a natural planet. And on a natural planet, you don't have all of this selfishness and negativity and insensitivity that you have on Earth. And of course, it's not that we were totally ignorant about how conditions are on Earth. We had looked at Earth from a distance and we could see how conditions were, that they were difficult. But it's one thing to see it from a distance, it's another thing to actually experience it when you are in embodiment. It's not only on the physical body, but it's on the emotional body, the mental body, and the identity body. It's really such a contrast, such a difference between Earth and a natural planet that it can be hard to imagine it in the beginning. I remember when I first heard about the concept of avatars and natural planets, it immediately resonated with me intuitively, but it took me quite some time before I could start consciously realizing how huge the difference is between Earth and a natural planet. And that's why it took me a while to actually fully acknowledge how big of a shock, how big of a trauma it was for me to come to Earth. And I think most people who look into this, they'll have the same reaction. In the beginning, we can't quite believe how different it was because we are so used to things on Earth. We have it's not like we come to necessarily accept it, but we've come to we can live with the way things are on Earth. And that's precisely what I'm going to talk about, because that is the primary outcome of the shock, the trauma that we went through. Now, in order to understand this trauma, it's not enough to understand that there's a huge difference between a natural planet and an unnatural planet. In order to really understand our situation as avatars, you have to have the concept of fallen beings. And the reason why this is important is simply that the fallen beings were aware that they didn't come to Earth alone, that we came as avatars to be a counterweight to them. We came actually to prevent them from taking over the whole planet and controlling humanity and taking humanity down with them. And they, of course, don't like that whatsoever. So, in other words, the fallen beings see avatars as a threat. And not only a threat, an existential threat, a do-or-die threat, an all-or-nothing threat. So, this means that they didn't just sit passively by and let us do our thing here on Earth. The fallen beings literally, and I mean literally, hunted us. They hunted us for the specific purpose of preventing us from having a positive impact on Earth. And the way they attempted to prevent this was to destroy us psychologically, to destroy us spiritually, so that we didn't dare to stand up to them, didn't dare to speak out, didn't dare to have a positive impact. It's literally, it was a deliberate extermination campaign by the fallen beings. In order to fully realize this, you have to realize that there are fallen beings in embodiment in a physical body. But when you are in a physical body, you have a limited awareness. So the fallen beings who were in physical embodiment, they didn't really understand the concept of avatars, and they didn't really have the ability to see, oh, here's an avatar, let's go after that person. But there are also fallen beings in the emotional realm, in the mental realm, and in the identity realm. And especially the ones in the identity realm, they had a higher awareness than the ones in physical embodiment. So they knew about avatars. They understood what avatars is. And of course, there's a certain hierarchy, a false hierarchy of these fallen beings. So the fallen beings who are in physical embodiment, their minds are often taken over either by fallen beings in the emotional realm or those in the mental and identity realm. And this means they become kind of like marionettes. So they can do the bidding of these fallen beings in the higher realms without necessarily being consciously aware of why they're doing it. So you have fallen beings in embodiment, and they were tools for trying to destroy us, to expose us to all kinds of atrocities. But they weren't necessarily aware why they were doing this. They were just acting based on the basically being controlled, their minds being controlled by these fallen beings in the higher realms. But it's important to understand or begin to lock into that this was a deliberate and completely insensitive campaign. They had no sensitivity whatsoever. I mean, they were ruthless, completely ruthless in trying to destroy us. And this is a big part of the shock we were exposed to. So, in order to really grasp this, we have to talk a little bit about what it means to take incarnation on a planet like Earth. And I've explained in some of my other videos that on Earth there are 144 levels of consciousness that are possible. So, in other words, you can go from the very lowest level of consciousness, which are the most selfish, self-centered, egotistical, narcissistic beings. You can go to the highest level of consciousness, which are the most altruistic, selfless beings that have a sense of the oneness of all life and are working to raise the all. And of course, most people are somewhere in between. But as avatars, we had achieved a higher level of consciousness on our natural planets than even the highest level on Earth. So in other words, we were beyond the 144th level of Earth when we had graduated from our natural planets. But we couldn't take embodiment at that level on Earth. So in order to take embodiment on Earth, we had to descend to a lower level of consciousness. And we basically had to descend to the 48th level of consciousness, which is the level that new life streams on Earth start at. And then we have some, as I said, an intuitive sense of connection at that level. We can go up from there and expand that connection, or we can go into separation. So when an avatar comes into embodiment on Earth, we first start at the 144th level. We take on a certain illusion. This is not a bad illusion or dualistic illusion, but it's an illusion that relates to how matter is on Earth, the density of matter, the density of a physical body. And then when we've taken on that, an illusion is like a veil. It's like a veil that's put on. You can say it's like a colored filter that's put in front of our eyes. And then when we've taken on that at the 144th level, we take on another illusion to go down to the 143rd level. That's like another colored glass that's put in front of our vision. And we keep doing that until we go down to the 48th level. And it's a little bit subtle, it's a little bit tricky to understand this because we do take on these illusions and they limit our vision, which means we forget that we came from a natural planet, we forget that we are avatars. But we still have a certain intuitive sense. It's not like we lose everything. We might say that we lose the specific awareness of where we came from, what our natural planet was like, but we don't lose a general sense that there is a higher planet than Earth. There is a different place than Earth. So in other words, you can say that the original inhabitants of the Earth, they were created at the 48th level. And they had no sense whatsoever that there was any other environment, any other planet than Earth. But so even though we start at the same level, at the 48th level as avatars, we do have a sense that there's something else, that there's an alternative, there's a different way to look at things. So we are not nearly as easily pulled into all of these illusions that many people believe in. including religions, political philosophies, belief systems of various kinds. That's why we are spiritual people, because we're open to an alternative to this. So what I'm trying to say with all of this is that when we first came into embodiment, we didn't have the conscious awareness. We are avatars, we came from a natural planet, there are fallen beings here, and they will see us as a threat because they have a different agenda than us. So we didn't know this. So here we are, totally innocent, we're coming into embodiment, and we quickly observe around us that we're different from most people on Earth. Because most people are into various kinds of selfishness. They have various beliefs, You see so many groups that are warring with each other, that are fighting with each other. And by the way, war was something that was introduced by the fallen beings after they came to Earth. So we see that we're different because we sense that we could never harm anybody. We're not here to harm anybody. We don't want to harm anybody. It doesn't even occur to us that we could harm other people. And it doesn't occur to us that we could harm or take advantage of other people in order to get an advantage for ourselves. So we sense that, it's not that we sense we are better, but we are not selfish as most people are on Earth. We're actually here to do something good, to have a positive impact. In other words, we have the best of intentions for coming here. And then, maybe not in our first embodiment, but in one of our first embodiments, we encounter the fallen beings. And as I said, they hunt us. They deliberately, the fallen beings in the higher realms, they look, here's an avatar that took embodiment in that environment. Where is there a fallen being in physical embodiment that I can use to attack that avatar? And they do it in various ways. One is they directly attack us. Another is they try to pull us into supporting the fallen beings. These are the two main ways. So these attacks can be quite vicious. I mean, they can literally, it's not even enough for them to kill us. They will torture us in order to create as much chaos and trauma in our psychology as possible. They will also try to pull us in to support them. For example, if a fallen being is a leader of a society, they will often take an avatar and let that avatar reach some high position in society, which most avatars are capable of because we have, still some awareness from a natural planet that makes us natural leaders. And so then once we have we have attained a leadership position, the fallen beings will try to create some kind of disaster and make us feel we were responsible for the downfall of this society, so that we again have this trauma in our psychology. And there are many different scenarios that can outplay itself. So that's why, in a sense, I don't want to be too specific because it is the specifics of what happened to each avatar are different, but there are certainly some general trends. And if you feel that this is something that that is important for you to work on at this point, I strongly recommend you start with this book. It has a long title, My Lives with Lucifer, Satan, Hitler, and Jesus. And it's written in the first person. I did this. This happened to me. But it's not about me as a person. There are some people that think, oh, this is my personal story. But it isn't. It's actually meant to be a universal story that applies to all avatars. So the specifics, of course, don't apply to all avatars. But the general trend, you will find something in this book that applies to you if you're an avatar. So it can be a good starting point to read this book. It's written as a novel. It has quite an elaborate storyline, but it describes how avatars can get embroiled with the fallen beings. And that is very important for us to understand, because it's the fallen beings who gave us this trauma when we came to Earth. And in order to understand it a little more deeply, we again can say, we came here with the best of intentions of doing something positive on Earth. And suddenly we find we are being deliberately attacked by certain beings. And as I said, we don't consciously understand fallen beings and what they are. We just experience somebody is deliberately attacking us. But I came here of the best of intentions. Why are they attacking me? And why are they so vicious? Why are they deliberately trying to destroy me? What did I do to deserve this? And you experience, but I didn't do anything to that person. I didn't threaten them. I didn't attack them. But they're attacking me. What did I do to deserve this? Because we have this sense, which is very strong on a natural planet, of course, that what happens to you is a reflection of what you are projecting out. This is something we learn on a natural planet. As I've said in some of my other videos, the universe is like a cosmic mirror. It can only reflect back to us what we send out. So we are so used to, from a natural planet, that our outer circumstances and the way other people treat us is a result of what we are projecting out. And so on a natural planet, this is why we graduated from a natural planet, because we took full responsibility for ourselves. We took responsibility for the fact that whatever comes back to us from the universe is a result of what we projected out. So if we want to change what comes back, we have to project something different out. In other words, we have to work with ourselves. The fallen beings, they are in a totally opposite state of mind. They are seeking to change what comes back from the universe by changing other people instead of themselves. But as avatars, we are used to changing ourselves. So here we are. We are on this planet. We experience it's a very strange planet. We don't really know what our natural planet was like, but we sense there's so many things on Earth that are so different. And then there are these people who are attacking us. And what are we thinking? We are thinking, I must have done something wrong here. I mean, how can things come back to me unless I projected something similar out? But what did I project out that caused them to attack me in this way? What did I do to deserve this? And we can't find anything. We can't find an explanation because we know we haven't done anything to this person. They are seeking to destroy me, but what did I do? I never tried to destroy that person. I didn't threaten them. And so this is a shock. It's an enormous shock. And it becomes a trauma. And how do we react to it? How do we react to this situation? Well, we have to find an explanation that we can live with. And now remember, we don't have the awareness we had on a natural planet. We have a lower awareness which we took on in order to go down to the 48th level and take embodiment. So we are looking at life from that 48th level here on this very, very dense planet like of Earth, where matter is much more dense than on a natural planet. And we only have these, religions that are here on Earth that are not anywhere near as sophisticated as what you have on a natural planet. So what are our options for explaining what is happening to us? And again, I don't want to be too specific here because it's different for each avatar. What I'm trying to say is each of us was faced with this cosmic burst trauma. And in order to survive it psychologically, we had to come up with an explanation for why this happened. And it's basically an explanation that allows us to survive psychologically on Earth. Because we can't get away from Earth, we can't get out of the body. But we are exposed to this psychological trauma, and the trauma is unbearable. I mean, literally, we can't live with it. And you'll see if you experience trauma in this life, or if you know other people who experience trauma, you can't live with it. It's unbearable. Psychologically, it's unbearable. But we have to find a way to live with it. So what we do is we create a certain explanation, or we accept a certain explanation from the outside. And as a result of this, we are creating a self. This is what I've talked about in several of my other videos. We are creating a self in our subconscious minds, in our emotional, mental, and identity minds. And once we have created the self has a very simple function. It's like a computer program. And it is meant to, based on the explanation for why this happened to us, it's meant to suppress the doubt we have of why this happened, of how this could happen, and it's meant to suppress the feelings we have. And once we have suppressed the thoughts and the feelings relating to the trauma, then the trauma becomes bearable. Then we can live with it. But the trick to understand is that in order to create this self, we took on an illusion, an explanation for how the world is, how the earth is, how the universe is, why these things could happen to us, even though they didn't reflect what we had projected out. And that explanation has followed us ever since. This is what I realized when I got these teachings about the avatars. I realized that at the time I had been, what have I been? Over 40 years I've been on a spiritual path. I studied a lot of different spiritual teachings. I had made a lot of progress, I felt. I had overcome a lot of things in my psychology, a lot of illusions, a lot of limitations. But I did realize, I was beginning to realize in the several years before I received these teachings, that there was something I hadn't touched. There was something that was still following me, that was still pulling on me, dragging me down, coloring the way I looked at life. And it's simply because this original birth trauma, the first self we created is what the Ascended Master called the primal self. And it literally defines how we see ourselves in relation to Earth, to this planet. And it has followed us ever since, and it has colored the way we relate to Earth. And I started realizing this before I had the teachings about avatars. I started realizing there was a certain way I looked at Earth. I couldn't really put my finger on it, but I could sense that there was something strange, something unresolved, something negative about Earth. I didn't trust Earth whatsoever. And when I got the teachings about the avatars, I realized, oh, but this is the explanation that I've been looking for all these years. It is this primal self that I created in a reaction to being attacked by the fallen beings. And it colors my entire attitude, my entire relationship to Earth, even the way I look at myself as a being, an embodiment on Earth. Because I remember going back to, I was probably 4 or 5 years old, when I realized what war is. I asked my mother and father, and because I had heard something about war and what it is, and they gave me some, standard explanation, but I grasped it. I grasped what war is. It's when human beings, two groups of human beings, are trying to kill each other and destroy each other. And I was so shocked by this, and I remember even thinking this, how could I be on a planet where there's war? How is it possible that I'm not a warring person, I'm not a violent person, how could I ever come to be on a planet where there's war? I couldn't fathom it. And when I got the teachings of the avatars, of course, I understood why. I had chosen to be on a planet like Earth, to do something positive, to help pull the planet up to the point where there can't be war on Earth because the consciousness, the collective consciousness, is too high. But I have to say that even after I received these teachings and started working on this, it took me years to overcome another reaction. Because you have to understand, the first time we're exposed to the fallen beings and their desire to destroy us, we create the primal self. But we create other selves that kind of follow from the primal self. And it could be in other lifetimes we are again exposed to the fallen beings or even human beings. And so we create other selves that are based on how we look at Earth. And one of the selves that I had created was that it basically said, you had to be stupid to choose to come to a planet like Earth. And I met many other avatars who have not necessarily the same reaction with stupid, but still a self that relates to, how could I ever make a choice to come to Earth? A planet as primitive as this, when I didn't have to come here, I wasn't forced to come here. How could I make the choice to come to this planet? And it took me years to resolve that. And I will talk about that in some of the coming videos. But you probably have a similar self. I can't understand how you ever came to be on this earth. And now when you have the teachings of the avatars, you can begin to say, well, I chose. And then you still have another self to say, well, how could I ever make that choice? And this is then what you can start working on. And you can start, as you start to resolve these selves, which I'll talk more about in the coming videos, you can come to make peace with the fact that you chose to come on Earth because you realized why you did. And you realized that it wasn't actually as crazy as it seems based on what happened to you on Earth. So there's obviously a lot more to say about this, which I will talk about. I'll try and build it up gradually so it doesn't become too overwhelming. I know in the beginning it can seem very overwhelming to this because it's so new to us. And it's so different from any other spiritual teaching we've studied, most likely. So, but I want to talk a little bit about also another type of reaction we can have. Because when we came to Earth as avatars, we knew what I've explained, that it's up to the original inhabitants of the Earth to decide whether the Earth goes down or up. Will they follow the fallen beings or the example of the avatars? So even though we lost the conscious awareness of this, as avatars we have a certain sense that we are here to help other people. We are here to make them see something, to make them understand something. And I can see I had that from my earliest childhood. My father had a very specific psychology, very stubborn. And even as a young child, I could see that this was hurting him. And I was trying as best I could as a child to help him see this. I wasn't very successful, but I'm just saying. I also could see in school, I wanted to help other people. I wanted to help them understand. I wanted to tell people something. And many avatars have the same thing. It's like, we want to be helpful. We want to be of service to others. And we know that this relates to helping them see something they don't see. And that's also why, as avatars, when we find our first spiritual movement, we become very enthusiastic about it. We think that, oh, now if we could just get all other people to accept these spiritual teachings, then we could solve all problems on Earth. And then we usually experience that, no, that isn't going to happen because all other people are not going to accept my spiritual teachings. They are going to either reject it violently or they're going to just flat out ignore it. And this ties into what also happened to us in our first embodiment. So we were on the one side, we were attacked by the fallen beings who tried to destroy us, but we were still trying to help the population of Earth. But we found that they either ignored us or they rejected us. They argued against it based on their existing beliefs. In other words, we found that the general population of Earth are not open to what we bring as avatars, the higher awareness and insight that we have. They're not open to it. And they will use their existing beliefs to argue against anything we say. And this created another trauma. I mean, there was the trauma of the fallen beings. Why are they trying to destroy me? But the other trauma was relating to the population of Earth. Why are they ignoring me? Why are they rejecting what I'm saying? Because you see, when we come from a natural planet, on a natural planet there isn't suffering. We're not suffering on a natural planet. But on Earth, obviously, people are suffering. The first noble truth that the Buddha defines 2,500 years ago, life is suffering. Because life on Earth is suffering because most people are in a duality consciousness where you can only suffer. So, as avatars we came to Earth, we want to help people overcome suffering. And we thought, as avatars, well, as soon as we tell them that they don't have to suffer and there's a way out of suffering, they will take it, they will accept it, they will welcome us. But we experience, no, they don't welcome us, they don't accept it, they don't even want to listen to us, they want us to shut up and go away. So our question was, why are they rejecting us? They are clearly suffering. We are showing them a way out of suffering. Why don't they want it? Why do they want to continue to suffer? And we couldn't understand this. So again, we had to create a subconscious self that made it possible for us to live on a planet where most people don't want to overcome suffering. They want to continue to suffer because they either think it's the only way to live or what, they are addicted to suffering or what? I mean, we couldn't grasp this. So we had to create a self, again, that could live with this. And this, I realized, had colored my entire relationship to other people. I can't be forceful. I can't try to persuade them. I can't tell them what I really know because they don't want to hear it. So all of these thoughts I had in my relationship to other people. And it's partly because as avatars, we can say that if you want to make it black and white, the fallen beings, they're not only willing to force others, their default reaction is to force others. They have absolutely no respect for free will, so they are willing to force the people on earth. We as avatars, we have respect for free will. We know we are not here to force people because we can't actually help them escape suffering by forcing them. You can't force people to not suffer because it's force that causes them to suffer, the force-based mindset. So we know and we have respect for free will. We don't want to force people. But then we stand here and we see that the fallen beings, time and time again, they are forcing people to follow them blindly, and it creates all kinds of disasters. But when we tell them there's a way out of suffering or to avoid suffering, they don't want to listen to us. So what do? How can we live with this? It's like we are feeling, and I remember going through this, I realized that what was my point in coming to Earth? What chance did I have of fulfilling a purpose and of having a positive difference on Earth when nobody wants to listen to me? How could I ever have a positive impact on Earth when people just turn a deaf ear? And it took me years to resolve this because I had created this self that said, well, I'm on a planet where people don't want to listen to me. I can't get off, so I have to find a way to live with it. And so myself had come up with some convoluted explanations for this. And you most likely have the same kind of self, explaining why people don't want to listen to you. And so again, what I'm saying, it's not about, at this point, the specifics of yourself. It might be slightly different than mine, but it's a matter of realizing the general tendency. We came to Earth with the best of intentions. The fallen beings attempted to destroy us. The human beings attempted to ignore us or make us shut up. And this was a shock to us. It caused a trauma. How did we deal with it? By creating these subconscious selves that make it possible for us to survive psychologically in an environment where we can't survive psychologically and we don't want to survive psychologically because we don't want to be here. Basically what happened after this initial shocks that we received of being rejected or attempted to destroy is we decided, I don't want to be on Earth. I can see, as I said, in the years before I received the Avatar teachings, I had sensed there was something about my attitude to Earth that wasn't right. And I can see it now. It was that I decided very, very long time ago in my first embodiment, I don't want to be on Earth. And this has many ramifications because we are rejecting the opportunities that are here. We are feeling we can't enjoy anything on Earth. And there's nothing we really want to do on Earth. And it often causes avatars to be pulled into these nihilistic philosophies or nihilistic spiritual teachings. I've talked in my series about non-duality. I talked about how there are some philosophies out there that talk about basically life has no purpose because it was sort of an accident that we became self-aware beings, but we are separate selves, and the purpose of our existence as separate selves is to realize that we are unreal as separate selves. We don't actually exist as separate selves. So we go back into Brahman or infinite awareness. And that's, to me, a nihilistic, self-denying philosophy. But as avatars, we can be pulled into this because we don't want to be here. We see no purpose for being here. And so what you can realize when you begin to look at this and resolve it, you realize there is a purpose for being here, because even if we couldn't fulfill the purpose of having a positive impact on Earth, we can still grow personally. And we can have experiences on Earth that we couldn't have on a natural planet. And this actually helps us reach a higher and more sophisticated level of consciousness that we could do on a natural planet. And that's just one of the reasons why we chose to come here and why it wasn't such a crazy decision. But the other thing is we can realize is that even though people won't listen to us, we can still have a positive impact on the planet. Because by the fact that we are in physical embodiment and that we are raising our consciousness, we are pulling up on a collective consciousness. The other option is, of course, we can work with the Ascended Masters that I've said in several of my videos. The law of free will is such that the Masters have the power to change Earth, but they don't have the authority to use that power. But we who are in physical embodiment, we have the authority to call upon the Masters to use their power. And that's another way we can have an impact, even if most people don't pay any attention to what we're doing. And we can also, as I've said in some other videos, we can actually serve to bring the judgment of Christ upon the fallen beings so they can be taken off the planet, which will then accelerate the upward spiral that Earth is in. So there are many things, positive things we can do on Earth, but we won't be able to really see this and log into it until we overcome these selves that we created as a result of the trauma of coming to Earth. Because these selves have given us this negative view of Earth. It's a primitive planet. There's nothing here I want to do. I don't even want to be here. So I just want to withdraw as much as I can from life on Earth and hope to get out of here. But the thing is, you're not going to get out of here as long as you are in this state of mind of rejecting the opportunity that Earth provides. That's just something I realized, that it's basically, if you want to get out of here, you can't get out of here. Because you are in this state of consciousness. And in order to rise to the 144th level of consciousness and ascend, you have to make peace with being on Earth. You have to come to accept being on Earth. But how can you do this? Only by overcoming all these selves that you created based on your negative experiences on Earth. You have to let those selves die. And basically what we have to do is return to the innocence that we first took embodiment with. Jesus said 2,000 years ago, he said, no person can ascend back to heaven save the person who descended from heaven. In other words, we descend without having all of these separate selves that we created in reaction to the fallen beings or the human beings. And the only way we're going to ascend back is by letting those selves die, overcoming them. And by overcoming them, consciously seeing them and overcoming, we grow, we raise our awareness. And we then achieve the fullness of the Christ consciousness that is our highest potential on Earth. And this is what will have the maximum impact. Just look at Jesus. One person 2,000 years ago attained the Christ consciousness. And he has had a major impact on Earth. Well, this is not the age for individual Christhood only, where one individual stands out. This is the age where 10,000 people have the potential to manifest full Christhood. Millions more, a high degree of Christhood. Just imagine that many people manifesting and expressing a higher level of consciousness. Now look at Jesus. What did the fallen beings do to Jesus? It was the fallen beings who had him condemned to death and crucified. So what do the fallen beings do? Well, first they try to destroy him psychologically. You see the scribes and Pharisees and how they attacked him, they tortured him, but then they killed him. And that's what the fallen beings will generally do to avatars who stand out from the crowd. They kill us. And most of us have been killed in past lifetimes. I, in fact, had a very strong self when I first started learning about avatars that said, well, what's the point in standing out? They just kill me anyway. But the reality is, what if 10,000 people stood out and millions more with a high degree of Christhood? They couldn't kill all of us. So that is how we can have collectively a major impact on the planet and the future of this planet and help bring it into the golden age and bring that golden age into physical manifestation. The golden age has already started descending through the identity, mental and emotional realms. And that's some degree broken through in the physical. But we, when we become aware of who we are, attain the higher consciousness, we can have a major impact on bringing it into physical manifestation. And for me, that gave me a tremendous sense of purpose, but it wasn't the original purpose I imagined when I first found the spiritual path. So I had to overcome these selves in order to log into the higher purpose. And I'm sure you can do the same by making use of these teachings. So I hope you will either read the book, My Lies with Lucifer, Satan, Hitler, and Jesus. I think it will be, you just look at Amazon, look at the reviews on Amazon and see for many people this was a before and after experience. It was a revolutionary experience to read this book. And I also hope you'll join me in the following videos where I'm going to talk more about how we resolve this avatar psychology.